Hi, welcome to my channel, Geekly Created. Today we're going to be reviewing the Geeetech Mizar M. Now the way this is going to go is I'm going to give the features and benefits of the printer, everything, the specs and all the paper type stuff. And then I'm going to go through a build and of the printer itself, giving a lot of tips and tricks throughout the building process. And I have a couple printers, so I might be able to help a few of you guys out with just little tidbits of information throughout that process. And then at the end, I'm going to give my full actual opinion of the printer and show a couple little things. Now, this isn't a sponsored video. They didn't send me this. I paid for this with my own money. And there will be timestamps down below, so you can skip ahead to whichever part you want. And before we get into any of that stuff, though, do me a favor, help me grow. Hit that like and subscribe button down below, and share this to a friend that you might think can get some benefit out of it. Or I know I'm going to be putting out a lot more of the review type videos. I already put out 3D print builds and different cosplay props that I build for my Etsy site. So if you like any of that stuff, or if you know anybody that does, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe. It'll really help me out. It'll help me grow. Now, without further ado, the Geeetech Mizar M. Now, I believe this came out in September of last year, 2022. It's currently March of 2023. This printer is a dual extruder printer. That's the M, it's the multiple. So it has two extruders, and they're Titan extruders with the extruder motors directly here on the X bar. And that takes into a Bowden tube into the single print head. Now the print head is swap outable. I have the separate color module here, which goes two into a single tube. And there's also the gradient module that you can swap in and out for it. And this has more of a mixing chamber underneath where the tubes come in, so it mixes together and then comes out the single nozzle. So this would be good for anytime you want to do like 30% of this color, 70% of that color, or something along those lines, or 50-50 or whatever. If you want to make your own custom colors, you could totally do that with this one. I typically use the separate model, separate color thing. I like to do two color prints, and I also do prints with a PVA dissolvable support. So that's for the intricate stuff that, a regular support trying to break it away, you end up losing some of those details. You end up breaking off some of it. The dissolvable support really works, and that's what dual color printers or dual material printers even are really good for. Now this printer also does have the 3D touch for bed leveling standard out the box. It has the filament runout detection standard, has anti-backlash springs on your Z-axis standard, has two Z-axes, so it keeps a balance on your X bar, which is definitely helpful with the extra added weight here on the X bar. I don't know how that's going to affect over time, so this is the first printer I think I've ever seen with two extruders on the X bar, so we'll see. It does have contactless Z, Y, and X stops, so it has this little bar that goes in between a sensor. The connection point on your extruder or your print heads is a single plug-in connection. That makes sense for the whole swap outable. Also a plug for your 3D touch. As a full color touch screen with a 32-bit board with Marlin 2.0 standard. But yeah, I think that's about it. The things that made me think a little bit after I was setting it up. The filament coming here, whooping down here, I thought it was a little janky, but actually it works out pretty decent as far as I can tell so far. The other thing is it doesn't have any springs or adjustment knobs for your bed. That was a little strange to me. I'll get into the actual thoughts and stuff afterwards, but that's the one thing that kind of struck me strange when I was building it. But yeah, so without further ado, we'll get to the building and unboxing, and then I'll come back here and I'll tell you my final thoughts on everything. Oh, something else it has. Yeah, I don't have them in right now. There's just a regular screw there, but it does come standard with those little thumb screws to where you can tighten up your belts right here instead of having to hold it while you tighten. I think that's a really good addition. I just put the screw back. I used the Allen head screw that comes with it for it instead of the thumb screws, because I think that tends to stay a little bit tighter than the thumb screws. But yeah, So we'll get to the unboxing, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. All right, this is the Mizar M from Geeetech, Geeetech. It just came out in September from what I could find online. There's not really a lot of reviews out there, a lot of videos yet. It's a dual material, dual color printer. It's my first unboxing of it. It's actually my first unboxing video, period. I have 3 other printers, so I do have a little bit of experience with printers. I'll be doing reviews on those individually later. It comes with an actual user manual, fully written out. That's pretty good already. A little bit of tips and tricks for your setup. And a thank you card with technical support and user club stuff. And the packaging stuff, you know. Ooh, we got a box. What's in the box? A box within a box. The box within a box. Got extra little parts. This is where some of the principles are, the tools, you know, the extra filament that comes with it. And we got the filament, some extra heads, or nozzles, I should say, the screws, all that. What is that? Oh, that's a crazy, like, new nozzle. I wonder if that's for one of the heads specialty. So they have regular nozzles in here. And then they have these ones. I've never seen these. Here, I'm gonna come show this closer. I've never seen these ones. I'm wondering what that's gonna be for. That's either gonna be for the separated or the gradient module. There's actually 2 separate heads that this comes with. It's one of the coolest parts, I think. Let me go through this still. Has the 2 things for the spool holders, and actually comes with a 3D touch out the box. So no needing to buy the auto leveler separate. But here's one of the print heads. This is the separate color module. So if you're doing separated colors, you would put this print head on. And then power cord. The dual extruders. These are Titan extruders. So, and then you have your filament run out already set up for it. This is actually all on the X gantry. So, more packaging. And then here's the gradient module. And like I was saying, you would take this head off, and then you could put this head on for doing separate colors. So it's separate and gradient as different full print heads. And more packaging. And then the base. So that's the main base. It comes with a PEI spring steel board out the gate. Another thing you just don't have to get. And this video is definitely not sponsored by Geeetech in any way. I just wanted to make a video. And I'm gonna put it together on camera. One of the things I liked about this whole setup when I went to go purchase it, for one, it's actually very reasonably priced for what it is compared to other dual color setups. It is a 250 by 250 instead of the standard Ender 3 220 by 220. The end stops are actually these sensor versions. So it's like a sensor here that a bar goes into. I haven't seen that on a printer yet, at least none of the ones I have. So I don't really have experience with that. It is a dual Z setup. And he even has the little thrust washer things that keep it to where it's stable so it doesn't bounce around on there. So that's good too. But the thing I liked about it is it has everything out the box. I don't have to buy upgrades. I don't have to get the individual little things. Like a couple of my printers, I had to get the spring steel PI board. I love the PI boards. They make it so much easier. Two of my printers, I got a 3D Touch, or it's actually a BL Touch. It's the exact same thing. It's just different company, and I think the BL Labs is technically supposedly better. I've never used an actual 3D Touch yet, so this will be interesting to try out. So yeah. So going to put it together. Most printers, when I first get them, the very first thing I do is I'll go through and I'll level the base. This one's actually fully built, encased in this, and it is solid. I don't think I'm gonna have to loosen everything up. Yeah, I would do the wiggle test, on especially the four corners. This one does seem like it actually has a little bit of a wiggle this way, and it's consistent over the entire table. So I probably will still do that. I need to figure out how. And I have a cat climbing in a box. So I'm gonna take, and I'm actually gonna pop open the bottom. I'm gonna try and find the crossbar between the two side 80/20s. That's the aluminum extrusion. I think these might be 40/20 aluminum extrusion. So most 3D printers, every one of them that I've gotten, I've needed to tighten the frame, the aluminum extrusion frame on the base, and then also I would break these four here and tighten them as well. I'll do that here in a bit with this one. It has a full tool setup that it comes with it. It even has a solid 6-7 millimeter. So that's thick. Most of the 3D printers don't come with this thick of a wrench. It's usually these little thin sheet metal guys. This is a real wrench. So that's a bonus already. Oh, okay, so there is no aluminum extrusion all the way through. It is a small piece in the base that, disconnect this case fan. So I'll let you see underneath. You have your power supply, your TFT, the LCD TFT. It has a small piece of aluminum extrusion connected directly to the base via these two screws on the side, on both sides, that is just into this sheet metal housing. The main board here, the drivers are soldered directly to the board, so they're not change outable. But they are the TMC 2229 or 2209s. So they're silent drivers. It's a 32-bit board. So you can run Marlin 2, you can run I believe you can connect Clipper through it, through the Raspberry Pi, and all that. Your Y-axis motor is actually underneath inside the case. So for that little bit of a wobble I had, it might just be a matter of tightening up one or two of the feet. Might alleviate the wobble. And this aluminum extrusion has 3 screws holding it in. One on the top part here, and 2 on the sides on each piece of aluminum extrusion. I mean, I'll hold my thoughts for now. I mean, my first initial impression is, oh, okay, like what if too much weight gets put on that aluminum extrusion? Like, is it going to break through the case, or is it gonna put pressure on those what are they, M4s, M5s? I say probably M5s. I mean, it should still take a good amount, probably a good couple 100 pounds of force before anything actually would deviate or just disform those screws, but the possibility is still there. So I'm gonna get this back together and then I'll see you in a second. Okay, so now that I looked at the board, I'm gonna see. Actually, I think I've alleviated most of that wobble, just me putting it and tightening it. Maybe one of the feet was a little loose in the beginning. So the wobble is pretty much eliminated, or is eliminated. So the next thing, one of the easier parts, or not one of the easier parts per se. I'm gonna take these out. We're gonna look at the Y-axis wobble. These are on V rollers. So, see, it has a little bit of a wobble there, a bit of a wobble. So we want to find the eccentric nuts, which if you can see in here, try and scoot up a little bit. Those nuts in there, or those shafts between the rollers and the top plate, are round, whereas this side, they're hex. Well, the hex are connected to an eccentric nut in here that will allow you to tighten the wobble on this just by turning it. So, I'm thinking it's gonna be this size, yes. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that a little turny turn to where that one's a little more solid. And we're gonna come over here to this other one because it is a 4-roller system on this Y-axis. Oh, come on, get in there. There it is. An eccentric nut is basically, it's a little bit of an oval, so as you turn it, it's gonna move it. The center point of that post is gonna move around with the turn. So eventually, if you keep going, it's not gonna loosen anything up because it's actually tightened from here and here. This is just a guide on where it sits. So if it's not getting tight, just keep going, and eventually it will hit that spot where it tightens up. Like right there. So that still has a little tiny bit I can feel. So once you're at that spot, you want to find that perfect sweet spot. So it feels like the back's good, but the front might need a little bit more. So I'm going to take the front just a hair more. So there we go. So now we don't got any wobble. Whatever wobble would be in these springs. This one doesn't have springs. So this one doesn't have adjustment springs. This is all based on the 3D Touch. So this isn't a manual adjustment bed leveling system. I don't know if I necessarily like that, because even with a 3D Touch, you're gonna have some manual leveling. Okay, there is a little bit of a rock back and forth still. So even with the 3D Touch, you're gonna have some little bit of a leveling that you're going to need to do every once in a while to get it perfect. Okay. Yeah, don't know what I think about that. I like the thumb screws myself personally, to give it that extra bit that all my other printers do have, but we'll see, we'll see. I'm open to the idea. So, the next thing we would be doing is putting the X gantry on. This is pretty standard for most 3D printers. Well, I'm gonna need to turn it on inside. This is gonna be standard fare here with the button head, or button hex head, not button, but hex head. M5s, M5 35 millimeters long. I do usually turn it one way or the other, so I think we're just gonna go this way. And get it lifted up and in place. You don't want to crank down on any of the screws quite yet. You kind of want to get them lined up and in place first before you ever truly crank down on a screw, so you can make sure everything is aligned perfectly. And that's with any project, that's not just 3D printers. That's any project, build, fixing, repair, whatever. You want to make sure everything's nice and lined up right before you start cranking down, because you could have one that's a little off and then you'll start stripping out the hole or making it just more difficult to deal with if you crank one all the way down. So now that I have all 4 screws in, that's when I'm going to go ahead and start tightening them down. All right. So now it's fully set. Me personally, I always do this no matter what. I will loosen up these top 4. Just to make sure that's set, so that if these need any float or flex from when it's being installed, you can do that. And tighten them back down. Then this X axis, we're going to look at the same thing. See, this has a lot of movement. Me personally, I'm actually going to switch this over to the separated color right off the bat. That's the one I'm going to be using the most. The gradient is cool, but the separated color is actually more what I purchased it for. The gradient was just a bonus for me. So and I'm probably out of frame right now, so here, I'll move that in there. So then this is supposed to come right off. You have to have it unscrewed enough to get it past. Okay, so there's these little button heads in here that you have to have it backed out enough to be able to get past the button heads. And that's the separate module. So that's the gradient module. And this is the separated color module. And it has electronics and a board in there to tell the main system which module is connected at the time. So while this is off though, you can see the looseness here. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this eccentric nut down here. And one little quick turn and it was good. So you don't want them too tight, so I'm trying to back it off to where it barely is tightening up. Because if you have it too tight, it could wear out your wheels fairly quickly. Whereas if it's just the right tightness, your wheels will last a little bit. This particular model also does come with tensioners right off the bat. These are actually a lot of times I got them aftermarket, but you take this out on the end and you put in a little thumb screw that it comes with. These two thumb screws. One will go here and one will go here for your X and Y axis tensioners, and then you can loosen the little holder nut, and then you can just thumb screw it to the tightness for the belt that you want. These belts actually seem decent in their tightness right now, but over time when they start wearing in a little bit, you might want to give it a little tension, or when you go to change belts, it's actually real easy to do with a tensioner instead of having to do the pull method, pull and lock. You can just tension with the nut and then lock. So I'm going to hook up the wires. There's two for the Z-axis motors back here that are right in front. There's the two that are for the Z-stops that are already lined up with where they go. So it's just a simple slip in. The sides also have an eccentric nut. If you feel like it's too tight or too loose, you can just try and roll the wheels. And if they roll a little freely, but not too tight, that's probably good. And you can try and move it back and forth if you get any shaking. These over here actually feel a little tight. So I'm gonna try and loosen this eccentric nut up a little bit, give it a little bit of give maybe. Because you don't want it too tight, like I said, you don't want your stuff wearing out prematurely. Okay. So now I'm going to hook up the separated color module. Same fashion, just slips right in. Then you would tighten up the 4 bolts that hold it. And I'm also going to put this little piece back on that was kind of acting like a lock, but I'm assuming it's for something. Honestly, it's probably to hold up the wiring so that the wiring doesn't drag anywhere. It looks like it has spots for like a zip tie to go through to keep the wiring from getting. It does have, for the whole print head, it is a modular connection system, so it's just a snap-in single plug on top of the head module. So now here with the extruders, these are going to go on the X gantry here. And it's the little slip-ins for 2020 extrusion or 2040 extrusion or aluminum extrusion in general. It's a little slip-in. They slip in to the slot, and then once you start tightening them, they will turn on their own to lock in. And then the tension from the little lock on there will keep it in place. So you just loosen them up enough to where they're going to go in and turn. You don't want to take them all the way off, but you don't want them also too tight, otherwise they won't hook on the back side of that V channel. So then you'd line up all three and you stick them in. I mean, that's what she said, right? Then as you're turning it, you should feel a little tension and it'll grab and spin into place. You can do that with all three of the bolts to give it the maximum amount of oomph, grab in there. So then you got your Bowden tubes. They're going to come here and go into, they're going to go in from your extruder to your head. And then when you switch over to the other head module, you would just take the Bowdens out of the head module. You wouldn't need to take them out of the extruders. They do come with extra extruder or extra Bowden tubes as well. You could even get a Capricorn tube if you like the blue look instead of the clear. I personally like the clear look of these. The only time I really depend on a Capricorn tube is if in between the hot end and the nozzle sometime, or the cooling block and the nozzle, sometimes they'll have a small Bowden tube in like the original Ender 3s, but those aren't usually meant for more high temperature. This one does say it is meant for high temp as well, so it should be solid in there. I haven't taken, obviously, yeah, just got it, but I'm gonna go ahead and take apart these at some point to see how the inside's built, to see what you know, what the inside is, to see what kind of construction it has. I do notice already that both of these do have a silicone sock on them. So the original, I have a Geeetech A10, and already I can tell you this is 1,000 times better than the Geeetech A10. The Geeetech A10 did not come with silicone socks. My heating block on the A10 is absolutely covered in filament. And it's one of the drawbacks, or one of the downsides, I'll say, to that printer that I really didn't like. But this one already seems like it's going to be a lot better right out the box. I do like this blue plate. A lot of my PI plates are golden, so that's kind of a change. So we're going to go, and then it's just a matter of plugging in your cables. And a whole pile of cables as normal with any new printer. I wonder if this could go all the way over the top. Ooh, this might be able to just go over the top instead of... This never moves. So I might be able to just strap this up here and have it move around up here. So that actually sounds good to me. I have one of my printers, I have a D-ring hanging from the top gantry, or the top bar, and that D-ring holds the wiring. Whereas this one, it seems I can just connect it up here, and I'll probably play with that a little bit later. But for now, I'm just gonna see if I can get away with it. I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie it right there. That way it's up out of the way. There's no real way for anything to get hit, and it still has room to move down, hopefully. We'll see as it starts initializing. We'll see what kind of pressure and pull it puts on it. So this is for the X motor and X e-stop, is the 2 on this one. So X motor is here, and X e-stop. No, it's around. I can see the actual. Oh, it's hidden. Oh no, it's in the end. Okay. So it's in the end here. And then we have our FD0 is your extruder 0, which is the first one here, and your extruder 1 is here. So we got filament detector for extruder 1 or extruder 0, and then filament detection and extruder motor cable for extruder 1. And my cat is ripping up a paper bag. They are weird. Okay. Gotta love animals. The animals, yeah. They're weirdos, but you gotta love them, you know? They're the light of your life, right? Your animals and your kids. Those are the 2 lights of any grown adult's life. Oh, not any. Some people don't like animals, but most people that I have come in contact with. And I'm rambling. So these are for your filament, and it's going to be simple bar setup. So you have your hook and your thing, and there's your filament roll. This is going to go right off the back. This is the identical to the Geeetech A10 setup, at least for the filament bar itself. This thing, this is why you don't want those things to slip out, because then it gets stuck in the extrusion. So, but on the Geeetech A10, the extruder motors are also on this upper bar. It's all right, it works. I personally, sometimes I like it more than others. I do like it the fact of they're up out of the way. This one seems like, the only thing I can foresee with this one is that the extra weight on the Z might make these wheels go a little bit more, but it is a 3-wheel system on the Z, 2 on the outside, 1 on the inside, so the leverage is going to be very minimal. Leverage is going to pull on the bottom one, push, or pull on the top one, push on the bottom one. So I'll see what kind of wear it gets over time. And the actual screw entry point into these thrush washer pieces are near the top, so it should be minimal leverage based on this being in the middle. I mean, just from a physics standpoint, it looks like it could be okay. And I personally like my filament rolls to face different directions. It's just makes it easier. You know, you put one on one way, one on the other way, right? Instead of having to like fight them in between. That one didn't want to turn on the inside for some reason. tried to line up the filament rolls with precise, or not precisely, but about where these are. That's pretty much it for the build. Everything else will come from when you set it up, when you first turn it on, or no, wait, sorry. My mistake, it's not fully done. We have the 3D touch still. So, this one's gonna be done more from the front of the machine, or from the side. It's actually gonna mount right here. All right. So the the 3D touch connected to here. It's actually going to be connected like this. So I'm going to take and send the bolts through the bottom up into these slotted holes. Going to put a washer first and then the nylock nut, so that the nylock, when it's spinning, when you're turning this on, doesn't dig into the material underneath. Bolts tend to have a little bit of a bevel to them towards the outside that acts almost like a washer, whereas nuts have their sharp edges near the outside and they tend to tear up things when you tighten too far into them. So just as a good rule of thumb, I always put a washer first, then the nut. If it wasn't nylock, I'd say use a lock washer, but since it's nylock, and that's probably why they did it, you won't need a lock washer. And it is kind of difficult a little bit holding this in the hand. It might have been better to hook it to the machine first, but I try and find the most difficult ways to do things, you know. No. I mean, that's why we get into 3D printing, right? Because we like to tinker, we like to build things, and we like to spend, you know, a lot of time and effort to make these things, and like to learn how they work so we can improve upon them and you know, make stuff. It's the whole rip-rap community, or rap community. Before I go ahead and attach this, there is the little connector in the back, and it is pretty darn small, so I want to get this plugged in first. It looks like this is just a straight through, so I don't think it matters which side connects to which, but no. So plugging that straight in, so it's going to have the wires coming out of the top. I'm going to grab the little screw. If I can actually get it in my hand. They do give a couple extra screws in case you lose one. They don't give any extra washers, so that's interesting. You do kind of want this pushed up in the slots so that the tip, when it's retracted of the 3D touch, is actually above the nozzle, because you don't want the tip below the nozzle, because then it's not actually going to be giving you a level that your nozzle can print at. It's just going to be giving you a level that's way, way, way past your nozzle. Uh, so there you go. And then the nozzles here, the 3D Touch is probably about 1 millimeter above it right now. Then I'm gonna go ahead and come over here. There's 2 little notches on the connector, and you'll see 2 little notches here and on the thing. You wanna make sure those notches are lined up. It's kind of standard fare for a connector like that. And then plug it into its little spot. It's plugged in right on the side of the module. So yeah. Now it's finished. Or at least the build part of it. Now I'm gonna turn it around. And we'll give it a first kick on for you guys on camera. So. If it could reach the plug. That's not good. So one of the most important parts that I forgot to mention, like especially if you're in America, one of the absolute most important parts. If you're overseas, don't worry about it because it's already set for 230. But there's a little selector switch here. America, we have a 120 standard or a 115 standard. You want to push that selector switch over to the right and have it be the 115 volt. If you don't, you will burn your electronics. If you have it set to it came standard for me, it was set to 230. I just moved it over to 115. If you're overseas with a 230 setup, you can just run 230. But that is incredibly crucial. So, go ahead and double check. That one, it's over to the 115. Once you have it set, you never have to touch that again, but that is incredibly crucial. Then we can boot it up for the very first time. And as you can see, it is a color touchscreen. And we're on a separate print. It's already showing separate. And that's the whole build. Now for movement and all that, I'm gonna go off camera and set it all up and do a bunch of calibrations with, I use Geeetech calibrations. He does a really good setup. I'll put the stuff in the description below, and I'll probably do a whole sit down session with all this information anyway. Just going through these. It's kind of cool. So these wires are hanging down a little bit back here. I'll probably try and zip tie a lot of these up and out of the way from each other. That seems to be something that is going to be needed right off the bat. I know the one thing that with the Geeetech A10M that I ran into is one of the wires actually got caught on the bed when it was moving the y-axis towards the back of the movement. So when it would do that, it would cause layer shifting. All right, so, and you can hear how quiet it is moving around. Doesn't have all the, so a lot of the main printers are like that nowadays. So that was fun, right? We got it all built, everything else. So I actually, in all honesty, I've printed quite a bit with this so far. I did the calibrations after I built it. I went and did Teaching Tech's calibration set, or his whole printer calibration set. I'll put the link down below. It's a really good full step-by-step system that he set up to pretty much help calibrate any printer that you get. I mean, I use it for all my printers now. Every time I build a new printer, I just put his stuff in there. Or I use his site, I should say, and then I put all the stuff in there and I print them out. One of the first things you do is a base calibration cube, and I will have to say, it came out beautifully. And that was with no adjustments whatsoever, other than bed leveling. All I did was the bed leveling, made sure it had a good first layer print, and then you could see there's no banding issues, there's not a lot of ghosting, and it just came out beautiful as a very first print. In all honesty, the only other calibration thing I did for it was the retraction settings, so I can figure out what my retraction settings would be on my thing. I didn't do any acceleration timing. I didn't do any of that. I just left it stay like whatever was default. The next print I did was the benchy. The only issue with the benchy was there is this little artifact here that was in the slice on Prusa Slicer, and I didn't pay attention to it. But you can see that hole. That hole is nice. And then all the details, there's no stringing, there's no that, and this is all default settings. And it looks amazing. Same with the shark. This came on the SD card from Geeetech, and it came out looking amazing. I will say this is probably out the box the best printer I've built. Every other printer I've had to very much fine tune. I had to go through and calibrate and recalibrate and have to do specific little things and to make it work real good. Oh, another thing that came with it is the PEI board for bed adhesion. That really helps. I bought this for every one of my printers. It's a spring steel PEI board. I've had to purchase this for all my printers. This one comes with it default, standard. So now this, the whole thing about the springs, it actually didn't come into play much. Personally, I prefer them being there. I know that on the printers that I do have on my A10 and my 2-Auto Pyramid, both of these guys have, and my Ender 5, all of them have it. This one I don't have the problem with as much. This one, it comes in a lot, is if I have a larger print and I pull up on this, it'll pull up on these springs quite a bit because they're not very strong on this one, on my A10. So it'll set the springs out of whack a little bit. This one has the stronger springs. So this one, especially, I get really large prints on this print bed. And this one, it'll set them off a little bit. So I'll have to go through. I do have my automatic bed leveling BL Touch here on this one, but I like to have the bed pretty level even before I use that so that the baby stepping is very minimal. I do that with all my printers. The Geeetech A10, this one doesn't even have auto leveling, and I just level the bed. But this one uses the baby stepping as like its standard movement because you can't set the level of the bed at all. So it's just there. But you set your bed level and then it's fine after that. It works great and it just baby steps all the way. I think that's why they include the anti-backlash springs to give it that extra cleanness on the baby stepping so that you can get your awesome prints without it having those little layer bumps in here from, mismatched layers from just that little bit. But yeah, this one has made me a true fan of Geeetech. I do really like this Mizar M. I was a little skeptical when I first went to buy it because, in all honesty, my A10 is probably my worst printer. I liked it for the fact that it's incredibly cheap, and it does okay. It's not horrid, but it's not great. I'll do a review on that later, but this one has turned my entire opinion around on Geeetech. I got this one because it was an upgrade from the other. It has the 32-bit board that I really wanted so I could update, the newest features with the linear advance and things like that. which I can't do with the Geeetech. The Geeetech is stuck at Marlin 1. It's a 16-bit board. I'd have to upgrade the board. I'd have to upgrade a lot of different things on the A10 to be able to get it to this level. But that was less than 200 bucks. So for the price, for what I needed it for at the time when I bought it, it was perfect. And it worked great. It worked within reason great for what I needed it for. Now that I'm doing more of the 2-color prints, I got this one to try and increase that ability. And this one has phenomenally blown my mind. I would say this, I'd have to give it a 9.5 out of 10. It is an amazing printer. The only thing I could say that it could use, but that's just for personal thought about the future, is maybe linear rails, so that it could have more longevity, because these V wheels do wear out in time. But in all honesty, I've only had to replace V wheels on my Ender 5, which is my oldest printer, once. And I've had it for 2 years. And I run my printers almost constantly. Matter of fact, I had to squeeze in a time right now to do this video where none of my printers were running, so I didn't have that background noise. But like I said, I really like the printer. I probably will end up getting more of them. I still have space for one more FDM printer in here in my little farm behind me. So yeah. And if you'd like to purchase this printer, click the Amazon link down below. It's actually my affiliate link, and it would go a long way to helping the channel grow and helping me be able to bring a lot more of this quality content. Thanks for watching, and if this really helped you guys, or if you have any questions or comments, I'm always here available. You can just leave the comments down below, the questions. You can email me at geeklycreated@gmail.com, or, check me out on TikTok or YouTube, or this is YouTube. And check out my Etsy store. Same name, Geekly Created. So I have a lot of different stuff on there, and yeah. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.